All right, well, we're at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Virtual OSCE, the Future of Standardized Exam, presented by Education Management Solutions, who is the presidential sponsor of IMSH Delivers. Just a note that by registering for and viewing today's virtual learning lab, you agree to receive follow-up communication via email from representatives with Education Management Solutions. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the online learning section of SSH website by the end of this week. We ask that you keep your camera off and your microphone muted for the duration of the session. And if this is your first time tuning in to a learning lab, a virtual learning lab, note that these sessions are held each Wednesday at various time slots during IMSH Delivers. You can view the list of virtual learning labs and register through the IMSH scheduler. I'm now turning the session over to Lynn Welch, Vice President of Business Development and Marketing with Education Management Solutions. Lynn?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks so much, Judy, for setting this up. It's a great opportunity for all of us to get to see each other virtually and network and share some best practices and information. Really glad to see everyone today. Thanks for taking some time. I know there's a lot of events going on around IMSH, and I know all of us are missing being together in person, but I really thank you for carving out a little time to hear some of our lessons learned around the virtual OSCE and what lessons we've learned during the pandemic. And joining me today will be Lori Kearns. She's our Senior Vice President of Education Services. And she and her team have been quite busy ever since COVID set in with a lot of virtual OSCE training sessions. And she'll have a lot of real world stories to share from her perspective. And also joining us today is Alok Saxena. He is our Chief Technology Officer at Education Management Solutions and has been heavily involved in modifying a lot of our solutions and developing workflows ideally suited for virtual OSCE workflows. So thank you again for joining us today. Next slide, Alok. So I wanted to start out by thanking all of the healthcare workers. I also want to thank all of you who are educators. I know in a lot of our media, there's a lot of thank you and a lot of appreciation to healthcare workers. I haven't seen as much for thank you for the healthcare educators, and all of you had a massive job and a massive hurdle to overcome when COVID set in. You all had to figure out how you were going to keep this year's graduating class moving forward and under dire circumstances. And there's never been a time in our nation's history when getting the next group of healthcare providers out and on the front lines to fight this pandemic was ever more important. So I really wanted to start by thanking all of you for what you've done to make sure our country has the healthcare staff and they are prepared to really help us fight this pandemic. And I know all of us are looking forward to the vaccine availability and when we can get life back to normal. But a big thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Next slide. So we were in the same boat as everyone else when COVID set in. We all were together at IMSH last year, didn't see this coming. And in March 12th, as a matter of fact, the state of Pennsylvania shut our company down outside of Philadelphia. So within 24 hours, our whole staff was in a fully remote workplace and up and running. And Lori and her team, her education team, were already fielding calls from our customers. What can we do? What do you have? Can you help us out? And we had really been looking at how education was evolving as healthcare delivery was evolving. And we had seen quite a few years back that telemedicine really was making fast advances and was really going to change the way we educate our healthcare providers for tomorrow. And in 2019 at IMSH, actually 2019, we had launched a telemedicine capability to do telemedicine-based training in our Simulation IQ learning management platform. So we had a great baseline to start looking at how do we modify that technology to really support everyone educating and running simulations out of their house with just the tools you already had in front of you. So we really took a lot of these pieces into consideration. The number one piece was, as I just mentioned, you got to be able to use the tools you had in your house, because that's, everybody was shut down. What you could take away and take into your homes is what you had. So we really had to address the access and the technology barriers, leverage existing equipment. And then we really had to put a high focus on the security of the student data. We all saw how there were a lot of cybersecurity issues as everyone's workplace moved into their home. So we really wanted to make sure that we continued our tradition of cybersecure platforms to make sure that we could incorporate that, as well as being able to meet the fundamental requirements, which was how do you manage your history and the physical exam portions? And then how do you train both your standardized patients and the instructors on how to utilize the new technology form factors? And then really the final piece was there are a lot of different piecemeal solutions that people could utilize, but that required a lot of post-encounter resolution to pull all that data together. We wanted to take that out of the equation and make that very simple and easy to use. So those were some of the pieces we really focused on prioritizing. We've got our first poll question, Judy. We'd love to hear whether a lot of you tried a lot of different workflows for virtual OSCEs and get your feedback. As we go through our presentation, I apologize, I forgot to state in the beginning, please ask questions in the chat. My other colleagues will be jumping in to help respond to questions throughout the presentation. And we do plan on leaving a large block of time to have an interactive discussion. We're really looking forward to hearing your feedback. Judy, let me know how long you'd like to keep the first poll question open.
I'm going to grab that. I think Olivia's running that.
Okay.
Olivia, you on? Yeah, there she comes. Let me see if I can start that. Olivia, are you on mute?
Yeah, we are able to see results, Lynn.
Okay, great. So that's great. A lot of you tried using some virtual workflows. So that's great. I look forward to sharing ideas with all of you and understanding how you've incorporated that. So we'll close that poll, Olivia, and continue. So one of the things we did is when COVID set in, we were jumping into our workplace. Lori and our CEO and Alok were getting a lot of feedback from our customers. We went into a very rapid development sprint and put a virtual OSCE solution out into the marketplace inside 2 weeks. So April 1st, we launched our first virtual OSCE, and we really were focused on the ability to run virtual OSCEs from anywhere, making sure you could run this in your own workplace environment, and really making sure the interface was intuitive. When you're looking at trying to virtually train staff, standardized patients, and students on using a platform, you really have to focus on an intuitive user interface. And we all know these were very unexpected requirements. So cost was critical. A lot, being able to leverage the tools you already had was a critical component to keeping the cost affordable so we could keep the training moving forward. We also, at the same time, were working with some healthcare organizations that we partner with. And a lot of them were we were getting a lot of feedback on how telemedicine was being delivered. And we've been involved, as a lot of you have, in a lot of grassroots and legislative initiatives at both the state and the national level to really support the expansion of simulation to be utilized for clinical training hours. And the second initiative we were really involved with directly was a legislative initiative at the national level to extend the waiver for telemedicine provisions. And we were successful with that. So we do believe that is going to continue moving forward. And all of us are going to have to really look at how are we going to to really incorporate telemedicine in a permanent training modality as that grows as an engaged healthcare practice. COVID-19 really showed us the value of telemedicine because it kept both the providers and the patients safe. And we've heard from our healthcare partners that there was an 80% increase in patients on continuing through a complete course of treatments when they had the telemedicine option to remove a lot of barriers to access to healthcare. And I think we all care very passionately about that. Next slide. Now is our next poll question. Would love to hear from you all what your biggest challenge was when you tried to incorporate virtual training sessions. Olivia, can we have the second poll question up?
I think, Lynn, this one actually is about chat.
Right.
Oh, excuse me,
Yeah.
I apologize. So the poll is a yes or a no here. So if you can put in some of your feedback on your biggest challenges in the chat, we would love to circle back on those when we have our open question and answer session.
So some of those are coming in. Sheila is saying physical examination requirements. Certainly, we appreciate that. Sandy saying getting buy-in from students and the physical exam. Rachel saying training SPs to use Zoom. So yep, these sound very familiar.
Yes.
Unstable internet, that comes from Christy.
Oh, yeah, that is a big one.
Right. Right. So yeah, those are all very valid challenges and things that we need to overcome.
Yes, and thank you for all the feedback. We're really enjoying all of the activity in the chat, so keep it coming. This is a fun way to dialogue.
We had a question also about, how was it to get SPs engaged? And my response was really smoother than you might think. The standardized patients, at least with our customer partners and the SPs that we've continued to work with as we bring forward the virtual OSCE, they've been very, very pleased to be able to stay engaged, to stay working. Really, there were a few SPs who chose, no, this is not my area of expertise. I'm going to leave that to others who feel more confident with the hardware. But for the most part, we've had very, very engaged standardized patients and ready to move forward. And also one of the opportunities that came from this, Lynn, is the ability to work with standardized patients across the country. So no longer am I bound by those standardized patients in the area of my brick and mortar facility. I can, with one virtual OSCE, we had SPs from Iowa to Florida to New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania, all engaged in one session. So that was really helpful. We could have the folks that really met the needs of that OSCE engaged regardless of where they were physically located.
And that's fascinating as well. So, having the ability to have that wider pool of highly skilled or specialized standardized patients is one of the benefits that we didn't have in a pre-COVID world.
Right.
So let's move on to the next slide, please. So one of the things we found when we launched this platform is, Lori just mentioned one of the key benefits that really opened up, and with a different workflow, you get different opportunities as well. And we really saw some of the key values were, again, a wider pool of standardized patients to choose from, but also the ability to have that live learner, standardized patient encounter in a fully virtual form factor so that everyone was in a protected and safe environment, but still having access to the same tools that you always needed to use for assessments and learner performance, checklists, and reporting. And again, all on one standardized platform. One of the things that was amazing really was how fast this solution was adopted and fielded. So our solution has provided 321,000 encounter minutes since April 1st when it was fielded. And we're at almost 71,000 separate live encounters. We're over 70,000 hours of training delivered. So there was a rapid adoption and an ability to scale rapidly which was really amazing to watch. For Lori and Alok, I would say they might not find it as amazing as exhausting, but it was highly successful. Next slide, Alok. One of our customers, this was an interesting case study, and this is something that you wouldn't normally see. They actually were able to deliver 1,243 separate encounters in a single day across 3 separate campuses, with all of the instructors, the standardized patients, and the students participating out of their home. And this allowed them to have a standardized mass training event that delivered the same experience to each student. And they joined our team and adopted our solution right before the 4th of July weekend. And Alok and his development team got them up and running and configured with the technology inside of about 72 hours over the 4th of July weekend. Lori and her team got all of the standardized patients and the instructors and faculty trained on how to leverage the technology within the next 2 weeks. And then immediately afterwards, they ran their virtual OSCEs, and in a single day provided 1,243 separate encounters, all on one standardized platform, all in one day. So these are some great success stories. And it allowed both our team and our customers to really understand how to refine and scale these. This provides an ability in the virtual form factor to allow your students to have more access to that high impact experiential learning. And it gives some flexibility in how these can be standardized across large cohorts. So it gives us some great lessons learned, and some of these lessons we may be able to take back into the live in-person OSCEs face-to-face, but also give the ability to provide students more access to this kind of high impact simulation training. So I would like to turn it over now to Lori, who can dive in depth in this solution. Lori has a very extensive background with standardized patient training and a lot of operational experience with the National Board of Osteopathic Medical Examiners prior to coming and joining us at EMS and really driving our whole training program. So Lori, I'd like you to take it over and share some insights into the solutions we came up with. And I'll really look forward to hearing the solutions everyone else has come up with and sharing.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Lynn. And look, we're ready for the next slide. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, as Lynn mentioned, the functionality was integrated with our solution probably in early 2019 in anticipation of the future technology needs. And this allowed for rapid activation and refinement in March and April, as Lynn mentioned. The platform does provide video conference software for both Windows and Mac users. And for scheduling familiarity and continuity, virtual rooms are created in the software as a virtual meeting place. Encounters may take place with all remote participants or a hybrid of local and remote participants for those partners with our enterprise infrastructure. So we've got some partners who perhaps their standardized patients are within the brick and mortar facility and their learners are remote, or vice versa. The learners are on campus and the standardized patients, for health reasons, some of those are some of the protected audiences are within their homes. The timing is managed to facilitate each participant joining at the same time, and a countdown timer is present for all participants. And then the video file is complete with the learner and the standardized patient appearing side by side in one continuous video file. So next slide, please. We'll take a little bit of a tour over the next few minutes. And okay. Operationally, we missed a couple slides there, but that's okay. We've knitted together a concise snapshot from the different user perspectives. And do we have that?
Yeah,
ready?
I think. Sorry, Lori. I think I
That's
meant.
okay.
Yeah. So I can actually go back there. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. Appreciate your patience with that.
There you go.
All right, perfect. So we'll just be another minute here. There's a single checkbox that transforms a case to a telemedicine ready case. And then it includes all the assets for the learner, the evaluator, the standardized patient, including any pre-encounter, post-encounter documentation, confidentiality agreement that might need to be done remotely, forms, assessments, and so forth. And then, all right, one more, a look. We can also grant or restrict permission to view or download the recording in advance of the session. So all that can be taken care of in advance. And then one more slide. The session blueprint then can be established, created, generated, available for printing, depending upon the audience. So I could print that and make it available just for my standardized patients, my learners, or so forth. All right, now we're ready for the video file. Thanks, Luke, appreciate that. Okay, now we're ready. So we have knitted together a concise snapshot from the different user perspectives. So from the point of view of all of the learners, there is a secure login. Once logged in, our users are provided a to-do list with action keys to launch the encounter. Also the assessments, any documentation from the dashboard. A timer counts down to the scheduled start time, allowing all participants to enter on time. The learner and the standardized patient will engage in the encounter. Educators may also be present for an oral report, a debrief, quietly observe. The recording and transfer to the cloud for remote viewing then is automated. And there's meeting passwords embedded for secure entry into the meeting. If the standardized patient is required, may complete an assessment either live during the encounter or may submit the assessment following the encounter, depending upon your needs. Then the educator also has a view of the interaction live, as well as from the recorded file. The educator also has the assessment capabilities and tools to annotate those recorded files, and we'll show you those in just a minute. There's also a web-based chat functionality. There was some conversation in the chat about how to manage everyone remotely. And one of the ways that we've addressed that is through a web-based chat. And so regardless of where my standardized patients are, I have ready access to them to get them information that they may need. I have ready access to my educators and my learners as well. So it makes it almost as if they're in the next room. I have the ability to get messages to them and receive messages from them in real time. Excuse me. Next, we're going to see the view from the administrator. And there we go. We've submitted our chat. Excuse me. So there are remote monitoring tools that allow the session administrator to track the expected events in real time. There's a legend that you see there at the top. It's color coded, and it alerts the administrator or the proctor to the completed activities through the color coding status. The administrator also has access to all the participants through the web-based chat functionality. You'll notice that there's an orange status here that indicates an active status. Green would indicate completed status. And in this example, the red indicates that something's either not yet started or not configured. The administrator or proctor also has the ability to have quick access to drop into the encounter either as an active participant or a passive observer, or just to drop in to make sure that everything is running smoothly, address any maybe technical concerns or anything like that. So they have it, we call it the nuclear option, just the ability to quick launch that meeting and be a part of that experience for just a few minutes. And then lastly, we're returned here to the session dashboard for the updated status when that's completed. Then once that video file is complete, the remote viewing is accessed by permission. So you see here the ability to see that video access, that video file remotely through the web interface. And also there's bookmarking capabilities here too. So that is an opportunity to annotate that video file with particular events that may have taken place or areas that need to be addressed for any kind of follow-up debrief, oral presentation, anything like that. So, all right, that is the tour of our virtual encounter. I believe we're going to hand it off now, hand it back to you, Alok, as our CTO for EMS. You have driven a great deal of innovation through the application and the platforms. And so, oh, looks like we have a poll question first. So let's get right to that poll question. And the question is, will you continue virtual simulation post the pandemic? And I think that's an interesting question to ask. And Lynn, you had mentioned kind of the challenges for healthcare telemedicine. And we know that prior to 2019, there was a slow adoption for a variety of reasons, and the literature is clear on that. And then we had a bit of a punctuated equilibrium thanks to COVID-19. And I think we're going to see rapid adoption now. And I think that we can't unring that bell. I think that telemedicine will continue on for healthcare delivery, and my sense in simulation as well. But let's see what our audience has to say. And I believe that poll is up and running. Is that correct?
I am seeing it. Lori, Olivia is running it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, I am not seeing the results. Do we have the results yet?
Lori, while we wait for the results, Sandy asked a question. If the learner can have a brief scenario posted in text, for example, with a chief complaint and vital signs and tasks before meeting with the standardized patient and during the encounter for reference.
Yes, and we've had a number of our customers who choose to do what we might call a doorway information. And so the learner has access to those we call it pre-encounter activities or doorway information that they can access before they actually are rolled into that encounter with their patient. And that's a seamless process. So the learner is taken directly from one location to the next location. It's a great question. And we do have our results of our poll here, and looks like most people are in agreement that we'll continue virtual simulation post the pandemic, and the rest we'll wait and see.
And Lori, before we move on, Alex had asked a question. If you could address a little bit about how a third-party observer could view a live session, and can they view it anonymously?
They can. So we noticed that there was a link available. And so we've got a couple of options. Either an educator who needs to be a part of that session can have that directly on their dashboard and enter, and they can have their camera off, so they might be an observer. We've had one partner who had an educator that was there as a quiet observer, and then once the standardized patient left, turned on their camera and then was an active participant and taking oral report and providing feedback to the learner. That's one option. The other is, as we noted in the video file, the ability for the administrator or an educator with that link to go directly into that encounter. And depending upon the naming convention on their profile, they could be anonymous. Any other questions that you're seeing?
Not right now, but Sandy and Alex, thanks for asking questions. That was a great question. And Duke had asked a question about if the web conferencing software was integrated, which it is. So thank you to all of you asking questions. And look, sorry, we jumped in front of you.
No, it's great. Yeah. No,
Now we're ready for a look. Thank you, Luke.
All right, thank you. So as you know, Lynn and Lori talked about, there is a lot of work actually was done to develop the solution. We leverage, of course, quite a bit of functionality which we had developed earlier with telemedicine workflow. But in addition to internally in EMS, we actually work with a number of institutions and individuals in developing the functionality. So I'd like to actually thank all of you, who were engaged with us, frankly, back in kind of March, April timeframe, and continue to kind of provide feedback and continue to give us ideas and and suggestions in terms of how we can continue to improve our virtual OSCE solution. So thank you. Now, we have a number of exciting features and functions planned for virtual OSCE. A physical exam, as one of the questions which just came up, is a critical component, and we are enabling physical exam capability. And the way the workflow actually works for physical exam is that evaluator or SP can share relevant files. It could be a video file, could be images, based on the learner requests, as learner is working on driving the diagnosis based on the case they are working together. So there's a very easy simple way for the evaluator SP to kind of push the image or video, and learner is able to watch, and learner is able to utilize that information in working through the case. That's one piece which has been developed, and we are in the final stages of our QA, and very soon we'll be releasing that. Additionally, there have been a lot of feedback, from number of schools as well as number of boards, because our solution gets used by some of the boards as well as by institutions, and the need for virtual proctoring. So that's something we have been working on, and enabling the learner authentication, so that when you have learner joining the virtual OSCE session, there is a process for how learner needs to be authenticated using their picture. It could be national ID, and then you have the kind of authentication process. And once that authentication completes, then learner is able to participate in the virtual OSCE exam. So that actually development is being worked on, and we have a number of institutions engaged in kind of understanding the details and making sure the workflow actually works well for them. So again, I mean, we will continue to kind of work on it. We'll continue to bring new and exciting features, and we are always interested in listening and learning from all of you. So if you have suggestions, if you have needs and requirements, please work with us, and we would love to kind of listen and learn and help address your needs in bringing more and more functionality in our product. All right, Lynn, I'm going to move to the next slide then.
Sure. One of the other pieces we have been looking at since launching our virtual OSCE and virtual simulation solutions back in April was how to enrich those even further, and how to bring more capabilities into one standardized platform. While we've had 94 institutions start utilizing our virtual simulation solutions since April 1st, we also were looking at how to deepen the clinical decision-making experience. And one of the pieces we were really looking at is how to bring more of the clinical reasoning framework into the virtual OSCE workflow in a fully virtualized way, how to create more opportunities for student self-guided practice on clinical decision-making. And one of the key products that we looked at and began examining that we felt had enormous potential is a product that the New England Journal of Medicine has been working on. And this product really has the ability to let students be guided through a lot of clinical decision making, and it's backed by some really phenomenal case libraries that are put together by leading experts across the medical field as a whole and healthcare as a whole with the New England Journal of Medicine. So we're very pleased to be able to expand our offerings with being able to incorporate some of these really deep dive integrated virtual training solutions like this solution from the New England Journal of Medicine. So we're looking very much forward to being able to offer this as part of an integrated turnkey part of our virtual simulation portfolio, and being able to continue expanding that very high quality content library that the New England Journal has, and their high-end expertise to really help us all accelerate how we move forward in these virtual education environments. So Alok, I will turn it back over to you and to Lori. So these are the main pieces we wanted to share, our lessons learned during COVID, and share a little bit of how we developed our solutions. Our partners, our customer partners were critical with giving us feedback throughout our learning process. We have more learning to go, but as we move forward into a world where telemedicine becomes a very mainstream healthcare provider format, I think we're all going to be modifying our educational workflows to make sure that our students of today are prepared to provide virtual healthcare in the future. So we would really like to open it up to open Q&A. I know some of you have asked questions, but we'll open that up. And Olivia, if you can turn some, let folks raise their hand. If you look in the chat, in the reactions area on your screen below, you'll see an option where you can raise your hand. Raise your hand if you have a question, and we would love to start an open dialogue with our remaining time, and really appreciate your attention today.
Lynn, we did have a question come through, and it looked like it came just to me, so let me describe that a little bit. Sandy was asking about physician assistant programs using the platform, curious to see how it fits with their curriculum. And I'm reminded that one of the things that we did over this last year was that we opened up to, we opened up our platform to customers who did not have the infrastructure to do this and knew that they were not going to anytime soon. So we took on then the responsibility of hiring the SPs and training the standardized patients and doing all of the lifting for them, so that all they had to do was bring their educators and their learners to our platform and go through the hosted OSCE. And so we were able to work with several physician assistant programs. We also have some customer partners that run physician assistant programs. So it was a good experience for us. And there were various ways that we addressed the physical findings. And I think that's part of Sandy's question as well, is that early on when we didn't really know and educators weren't really sure what to do, the early process was to have the learners describe what they would do, or to do it on a proxy, someone who was there with them in their bubble, so to speak. And then we moved towards having the ability to actually push some sort of physical finding to them. So there were several ways that we addressed that, and that made it more usable for the physician assistant students, especially going through that end of year high stakes event.
What a great question. And Lori, we have another one about the maximum number of learners with our solution.
Well, as evidenced by that day of 1,234 encounters, there is no limit. It's just however many you want to manage in that day. So there's no maximum number of learners. And I think that's another opportunity that the virtual environment brings that the brick and mortar environment does not, is that the ability to have as many virtual rooms as needed, and you're not bound by the physical space.
And Carla has a question. She's asking, were those groups or were those individual encounters?
Those were individual encounters. So it was a busy day, busy weekend. Yeah, wow.
That was a busy day. And look, this is a great question for you. Dwayne is asking, saying that an important component of the physical exam is the touch aspect, and it sure is. Palpation, percussion, stethoscope placement, etc. Do you have any ideas on how to assess these aspects of the physical exam?
This is something actually we've been working on. We recognize that there are aspects of physical exam which can only be done in an in-person setting. but we are looking to bring the virtual capability in terms of how kind of instruments could be used. What we have done so far from a physical exam workflow is more in terms of sharing evaluator or SP has a very quick way of sharing video file images, things like that. The next phase is really, as Dwayne, you are asking about how you can utilize the instruments and kind of do the physical exam. That's still being looked at. And frankly, we would love any ideas, any suggestions, any thing you like to discuss, so we can share some of our thought process and at the same time learn from you. So that's where we are with physical exam.
And we have another question also for Lori and Alok. What about the learner's feedback or satisfaction? What did we learn about being ways to measure those pieces?
Sure, that's a great question, Abraham. One of the things that we did feel that was important with the customers that we worked with where we were providing the standardized patients is we did some practice sessions so that when the learners came to our site for the first time, they were not being tested on the platform, they were being tested on their skills. So we did open up those practice sessions. And I think that that went a long way in terms of helping them to reduce the anxiety just over the technology and the hardware and the networking and all of that stuff. So once we got that out of the way, then they could focus on really what they were there to do. And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive from both the learners and the educators that we worked with and the standardized patients, because the standardized patients especially knew that we were right there and we could communicate with them in real time and we could jump into the session if we needed to for any reason. The learners appreciated the fact that everything was there from a single dashboard that they could work from, and that they also had the ability to communicate with us if need be. And we could also see from the software, did they were they able to get logged in or were they not? So that was helpful from an administrative point of view. And then the educators, they appreciated the fact that they could just attend and view live, do their checklist, their assessments live, and then be available for the oral presentation, the feedback, and or the ability to, if they weren't able to view it live, the ability to go to that single platform and see the video file in its entirety. And all that was automated. The recording was automated, the transfer to the cloud was automated, and then as we noted, the permissions could be automated as well. So hopefully I answered that question for you, Abraham. Okay, great, thank you. So any other thoughts, team? I'll go back to you, Alok and Lynn. Any other thoughts, any questions that maybe were triggered for you as we had a discussion today, or anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I think I'd just like to share that we've gotten some great feedback. I want to thank everybody for their participation in the chat. This would be a lot more fun if we were all together face to face, where we could have a real dialogue, but really appreciate all the feedback and the really fantastic questions. And we really learned a lot from our experiences this year. And it sounds like everyone had a lot of lessons learned. I'm just really looking forward to seeing where we go from here. We do know that some legislation passed to expand telemedicine. It will be here to stay. And it's going to be exciting to see how we as educators and industry work together to really continue the transformation of how healthcare education is being delivered. Alok, anything you want to add?
No, I think it's interesting. One of the poll questions we had was the virtual OSCE after COVID, and it's good to see that 75% I think institutions are the good feedback is that they will continue to kind of look at this going forward. That's the feedback we get as well, especially when we talk to some of our customers who have been using virtual OSCE, so there is a kind of consistency. And frankly, there is a lot more to come, especially around the physical exam. We recognize that that's been a kind of challenge to do in a virtual setting. And we are trying to innovate in that space and trying to do what we believe can be done with technology. But again, looking to engage, looking to get feedback or any suggestions, any improvements you guys would love to see. So just want to kind of highlight that we are here to listen and learn from all of you and help support from a technology perspective.
Well, and to that point, look, I think that we're seeing that the barriers are being removed to using telemedicine in healthcare. And I think that that will continue to take place. So we see an increase in adoption. We see an increase in appreciation from patients wanting to utilize that technology. And we're also seeing where some high stakes testing facilities are moving into that direction as well across the continent. So we're seeing that some some organizations who would normally do a high stakes exam in person are now needing to rethink that. And so my sense is that that's going to continue to drive this technology into the educational arena and into the simulation forums.
Yep.
Oh, thanks, Nick. Nick says, thank you for the presentation. Good to know we're all trying to accomplish similar tasks within sim centers worldwide. Yes, well said, Nick. That's an interesting question, Abraham. Can you say more about moral integrity? We know that we know that it's being recorded, and so that the learner understands that all of the statements and actions will be recorded. We know that we can provide a confidentiality or a code of ethics form in advance. We know that everything is preserved and secure, but I'd like to know more about your question. And at the same time, I recognize some names on the participants list too, and some that are using telemedicine in various forms. So if you have anything to share, we'd love to hear your comments as well. This is where we need music or something.
Now, a question for Judy and Olivia. For participants that may have additional questions afterwards, is our contact information shared along with the presentation so they can ask questions later if they have them?
Yes, I will go ahead and put a link into the presentation, or to where the presentation will be housed in the chat for everybody to reference.
Oh, Elizabeth, that is interesting too. That's great information. The AAMC is also developing core competencies for telemedicine across all training levels. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we do have one more poll question, don't we? Did we have one more?
One final poll question
Before we close out.
The poll is launched.
Thank you, Olivia.
We will let it run for about 20 more seconds to let everybody answer here. We almost have about 50% answered, and we will let you know when we are ending the poll.
Thanks, Olivia.
Okay. I really appreciate everyone's comments and engagement.
And while we're finishing that, Lynn, because it looks like you may be ending just a little bit early. Want to remind everybody the virtual hall will open at 12 Eastern Standard Time. And that remind the people that EMS has a booth there and they'll go visit you at the booth.
Great point.
We do, and look forward to seeing everyone over there. We do have more information about our telemedicine and virtual OSCE solutions over there. And you'll have access to our contact information. So you may think of questions later, just pop us a line, pop us a note, be happy to answer any questions. And I'd echo Lori, thank you so much for all of the feedback and the participation in the session. This is very helpful for us as well.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. Hope it's sunny wherever you are. And as a friend of mine says, stay safe and stay sane. And I think better words were never spoken.
Well, and thanks for spending some time with us today. Really appreciated it.
Thank you.
And thank you, Judy, and thank you, Olivia, for setting this up. This is a great platform.
Thank you. And you all have a great rest of the day and the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Judy. Bye-bye.
Thank you.